No one knew how long she had stayed there, half buried in soil, clothed in rags, more like an unearthed corpse than a breathing soul. Thomas Greaves nearly rode by without a second look. He wasn't that kind of man who sought out ghosts. Indeed, if he hadn't reined in, she would have been a mere forgotten silhouette in the breeze. But bereavement does something to a man. Since the world had taken all from him, his wife, his son, his very sense of purpose to live, Thomas ceased to pray. He just repaired fences, rode his property, and stayed out of people's affairs. But that day did not feel right. The sun was suspended heavy, brutal in the sky. The wind bore no melody of birds, no brush rustling, only quiet. And that quiet slid under his skin before he knew why. Then he noticed it. At the tree-line, something amiss. It had the appearance of trash at first, discarded blankets from a wagon that rode by. But his horse whinnied and backed away. Thomas dismounted and approached. That's when he got the scent of it. Sweat, blood, something decaying in the heat of summer. And then it shifted. A twitch, a whimper. His hand drifted to his gun as he pushed aside the dirty rags. What he saw underneath made his breath lock up. A girl, no more than 20, swollen face, split lips, torn dress to ribbons. Dirt was so embedded in her skin it looked like a part of her. One eye swollen shut, the other glazing right through him as if he wasn't there. "Please, don't touch me." The words were rough, parched, but as cutting as a bullet. Thomas said nothing, didn't even flinch, just stood there and looked at her, at the bruises, the ribs that pushed against her skin, the way her fingers clenched the blanket like it was all she had in the world. He could have left her. No one would ever know. No one would ever blame him. But he didn't. Instead, he shrugged out of his coat, wrapped it loosely around her broken body, and scooped her up into his arms. She didn't struggle, didn't sob. She simply collapsed against him, empty and still, like someone past the point of screaming. The return ride in silence. Nothing but the sound of creaking leather and the far-off caw of a single crow. But within that quiet, something awakened Thomas. A sense he believed was left with his family. He asked her nothing that night. Not her name, not where she'd come from, not who or what she was fleeing. He put her in the back room, the one that had smelled of biscuits and lavender soap but was now only dusty. He left food and water on the table, set a lantern outside the door, and shut it quietly. By morning, the food remained untouched. Water sipped little. She had not moved from the corner, holding the blanket, eyes open wide as if the ceiling itself could crash down. Thomas did not press. Day by day he left food, spoke nothing, and let time work what words could not. By the third morning, she had taken one sip of water. Small, fragile, but it was a spark. Thomas was not much of a conversationalist now. One evening, though, he took out his old harmonica from a drawer. Once, he had played it for his boy near the fire, simple notes, nothing showy. That evening, he played again. Low, slow, haunting. She didn't stir, didn't say a word. But her breathing changed. Her jaw clenched. And when he finished, Thomas could have sworn her eyes closed for the first time since he brought her home. The following morning, she ate half a biscuit. The next, she glanced up at him as he placed water beside her. Didn't speak, but didn't jerk away. Progress, quiet but genuine. And then, when it seemed like life was coming back, she actually spoke. Few, only 7 words, but they transformed everything. She stared at him, truly saw him, and with a voice as coarse as rocks, she spoke barely above a whisper. They were hunting beasts, but they caught me. 7 words. That was all. Thomas had witnessed things in his life, done things he never talked about. But this was different. He did not push her for the details. He did not have to. The bruises said enough of the story. And then the land itself began to speak. Boot prints near the barn that belonged to no one he knew. Clean-cut fence wire. A crow, nailed by its feet and hung upon his fence post. A warning. Then one night, he spotted a shadow on the ridge. A man, just standing, watching. By the time Thomas grabbed his rifle and stepped out, The figure was gone. The next morning, his dog lay dead. Poisoned. She didn't cry. Didn't even move. She just sat in the rocking chair, clutching that tattered blanket, and whispered, "They know I'm here." Thomas remained silent. He simply cleaned his rifle, sharpened the axe, and rode into town to see the sheriff, a fellow vet. They spread word, obtained a description. But law traveled slow out here. Too slow. So Thomas constructed the fire higher that evening, moved her bed nearer to the fireplace, and he sat in his chair with the rifle in his lap, watching the door. Because a man learns something fast on the frontier. If you're waiting on the law to rescue you, you better be waiting on a coffin too. And if this tale has you so far in, be sure to subscribe, because what happens next, the law won't arrive in time. Trouble came around dusk. The sky still orange, but shadows bold. Thomas was splitting kindling in the back when he heard it, the sound no rancher ever confuses. Hooves. 3 horses. Slow. Deliberate. He stepped from behind the shed. 3 men sat tall in the saddle, dusty and mean. No words at first. Just silence, the kind that makes your stomach knot. Finally, the one in the middle spat and said, "We're here for what's ours." Thomas didn't blink, just gripped the axe tighter. Within the cabin, she heard it as well, the groan of boots on the porch, the turning of the doorknob. She didn't cry out. She didn't cover. Rather, she grabbed the old shotgun Thomas had shown her how to hold, just in case. The door creaked open. A man swaggered on through, cocky as if he'd done this 100 times. She pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the cabin walls, dropped him dead. The others stopped. That's when Thomas acted. He swung from the side, axe in his hand, slamming the steel deep into the second man's stomach before he could get off. The third urged his horse, but didn't get far. Thomas's revolver cracked, ripping into his leg and sending him screaming in the dust. When the dust had settled, one was dead, one screaming, one knocked out cold. Thomas bound them up, dragged them behind the cabin, and by dawn pulled them to town. The sheriff asked no questions, just nodded. Posters came down days later in the general store. 3 names, 3 faces, stamped, captured. Out here, justice doesn't come galloping in on a white horse. Sometimes it lurches up onto a porch holding a shotgun in its lap. The cabin fell silent once more, but not the waiting sort of silent. The good sort, the sort that makes you breathe deeper, sleep longer, listen to your own heartbeat without fear following it. Thomas didn't speak much. She didn't either. But something changed. You could tell in her. She held herself taller, began cooking in the mornings, clearing off shelves, placing flowers from the creek in the window. She never told him what happened, and he never asked. But on one night, after the fire crackled and the sun had set low, she sat next to him. Not too close, just near enough. Her hair washed, her bruises healed, and she smiled for the first time. Not polite, not faked, genuine. "You didn't save me," she said softly, "but you stayed." That was all he needed. He reached for her hand, crude, calloused, but warm. She did not move away. Weeks went by, then months. People in town began to refer to her as Clara. Clara Greaves. Even without vows, even without a wedding dress. Out here, names don't derive from paperwork. They derive from who you decide to stand with. And she stood with him, every day, amusing how a shattered girl and a shattered man can create something whole. Makes you think, perhaps what is broken in us isn't supposed to heal by itself. Perhaps it's supposed to search for its other half. So I want to ask you, have you ever lingered when it would have been simpler to walk away? Or perhaps, just perhaps, has someone lingered for you? And if this tale resonated with you, deep down, hit the like button. Subscribe, because out here there are more tales about grit, about healing, about love that doesn't need to yell to be heard. Love that demonstrates sometimes just being is enough.